This is Mac OS Ken.
Minor moves from Apple watching analysts. The DMA war of words rages on, and movies aplenty on Apple TV Plus. It is Monday, the 4th of March, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. A note on Friday from Evercore analyst Amit Daryanani makes one wonder, should we get him a calendar? Apple 3.0 excerpted the note, which had AdRock taking ticker symbol AAPL off Evercore's tactical Outperform list. The analyst says the moment for that tactic has passed. Thing is, it passed about a month ago. Daryanani says the main catalyst for putting the stock on the tactical OP list was the December quarter earnings report. But as Apple 3.0 points out, that happened at the beginning of February. Maybe he could set a reminder next time. Worth noting, a tactical Outperform call is centered on a particular event. Evercore is still high on Apple. Points of concern listed in the note include flat iPhone expectations, declining sales for most of the rest of Apple's hardware, and weakness in China. Positives pointed out in the note include anticipated double-digit growth for services, super high gross margins, slightly better commentary around Apple Vision Pro, excitement around whatever Apple's planning in generative AI, and Apple's installed base of 2.2 billion iOS devices and growing. Positivity goes a long way. Daryanani has an Outperform rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $220. A mixed message on Apple that was also hard to track from Goldman Sachs to end the week last week. Barron's had the firm removing Apple from its U.S. conviction list on Friday after 274 days on it. The conviction list is basically Goldman's best ideas list. It's comprised of 20 to 25 stocks that the firm believes to be its most differentiated fundamental buy ideas across the companies it covers in the States. Goldman didn't say why it pulled the shares from the list. Instead, the piece offered a rundown of reasons a stock might get dropped, including a rating downgrade, price realization, the passage of catalysts, or the subcommittee believing that there are better opportunities elsewhere. Sounds icky. And yet, remember that mixed message I mentioned? Here it comes. First, while off the hot list, Goldman Sachs still rates Apple as a buy. And while Barron says the firm maintains a price target of $232 on the shares, a piece from Seeking Alpha actually had Goldman raising its 12-month price target on Apple shares on Friday from $223 to the aforementioned $232. The firm's thinking on the Cupertino company seems to be that whatever is happening with Apple right now is a right now thing. While acknowledging a lengthening replacement cycle for iPhone and weak demand for Mac and iPad, Goldman Sachs analyst Michael Eng said in Friday's note that he sees Apple's installed base growth, secular growth in services, and new product innovation as more than offsetting cyclical headwinds to product revenue. With the implementation of the Digital Markets Act, or DMA, down to mere hours away, Apple and developers are making their cases for what is wrong. But let's back up and remind people what the DMA is and what it's supposed to do. According to a piece from Apple Insider, the DMA labels certain companies gatekeepers due to their respective sizes and power over a given market. When the DMA goes into effect later this week, gatekeeper firms will be subject to regulations such as the one regarding the App Store, where Apple must allow third-party alternatives. There are also issues around messaging services being required to interoperate with rivals, though Apple's iMessage has escaped that through not reaching the gatekeeper threshold. It is the third-party App Store thing that Apple sees as wrong. In a white paper published Friday, Apple said so, using arguments it has used several times before. Boiling those arguments way the heck down, having a single app store controlled by Apple helped Apple keep iPhone users safe. While the company has introduced new features like third-party App Store notarization, Apple says the risks to iPhone users are going to go up under the DMA. Whether any developers believe that, a significant number have signed a letter to the European Commission calling Apple's stated privacy and security concerns unfounded. That is just one of their expressed concerns, though. A piece from Mac Rumors had 34 organizations writing to the EC at the end of last week, names you know, including Spotify, Epic, Deezer, and plenty more. Quoting the report, the 34 companies and associations do not believe Apple's plans meet the law's requirements. Apple's changes disregard both the spirit and letter of the law, and if left unchanged, will make a mockery of the DMA, according to the letter. Several specific components of Apple's plan are highlighted, including the core technology fee, the notarization process, and the terms that developers must accept. The piece goes on to say the companies and associations are urging the European Union to take swift, timely, and decisive action against Apple. The way the European Commission responds to Apple's proposal will serve as a litmus test for the DMA and whether it can deliver for Europe's citizens and economy, so say the contending companies. While the fight in the EU between Apple and developers has been brewing for quite some time, a relatively recent flare-up on iPhone's home screen may have been doused recently. A few weeks ago, we started hearing word that something was wrong with progressive web apps, or PWAs, in the iOS 17.4 betas in the UK. Like the PWA's functionalities had been restricted. Several days later, Apple said that was a thing it had done, once again, playing the security card. Basically, the company pointed out that PWAs on iPhone had always run through WebKit, which was bound or guided by all the privacy and security features built into mobile Safari and iOS. But the Digital Markets Act will require iPhone to support browser engines besides Apple's. Those do not have the same protections built in, so Apple hobbled the PWAs. That led to noise from the European Commission about an investigation, which leads us to this point in time, a point when Apple is saying PWAs will be back in fighting form when iOS 17.4 is released to the public. Question now is why? A piece from Engadget had Apple writing to developers on Friday. Quoting that message, "We have received requests to continue to offer support for home screen web apps in iOS. Therefore, we will continue to offer the existing home screen web apps capability in the EU. This support means home screen web apps continue to be built directly on WebKit and its security architecture and align with the security and privacy model for native apps on iOS." Does that mean iPhone will support other browser engines, but PWAs will not? In the absence of info from Apple, Engadget speculates perhaps EU officials assured the iPhone maker that the company wouldn't need to support PWAs from other browser engines, or maybe the company merely wanted to head off a formal probe and the bad PR it could generate. The PWAs only work on WebKit, though. Doesn't the probe still seem likely? Oh, what say we worry about that again when we hear about it again? It's probably not going to be long. Wondering what to do with that spare $1 million you got laying around? As of now, you could put it in your Apple Card high-yield savings account. Mac Rumors says Goldman Sachs, the bank that backs Apple Card and associated accounts, increased the savings balance limit to $1 million on Friday. According to the report, the account's previous balance limit was $250,000, which is the maximum amount that the U.S. Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, would cover in the event that Goldman Sachs were to become insolvent. Any deposits above $250,000 up to the new $1 million limit would not be covered by the FDIC in the event of a bank failure. And finally today, it was a big weekend for period pieces on Apple TV+. On Friday, I told you about the premiere of the completely made-up adventures of Dick Turpin. What I forgot to tell you, or forgot to remind you, was that the Ridley Scott film Napoleon was also set to hit the streaming service on Friday. It was, and it has, and it's available now on Apple TV+. If Napoleon is not of interest, how about 50-something other movies? 9to5Mac says Apple over the weekend launched a limited-time collection of movies to stream for free as part of an Apple TV Plus subscription. The move is not completely unprecedented. The piece points out that Apple has added a few movies in the past associated with major releases. That said, this is by far the biggest drop, according to the report. There is no apparent rhyme nor reason to the movies they added. There's no tie to specific Apple releases, there's no seasonal significance, and while films like Knocked Up and Con Air might be fun, this is not an Oscars-only roster. Some movies will mean more to some than others. I'll tell you a few of my favorites on the list. They include Catch Me If You Can, Star Trek Beyond, Argo, Minority Report, and Spider-Man 2. Plenty of others I could have named, though, as I say, there are about 50 movies on this list. The list might be of particular interest to owners of Apple Vision Pro. Some of the films on offer are available in 3D, according to 9to5Mac, so if you have an Apple Vision Pro, you can watch them in 3D on your headset. Now, cool as this whole thing sounds, the movie offering is limited in a few ways. First, you have to have an Apple TV Plus subscription to take advantage. Second, they are limited in time. Some run through April, while others will exit at the end of March. And finally, the offer is only for subscribers in the US. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.